clutch job. So now we got to take off the 9 bolts holding the cover on, and I'm just poking around in here looking at stuff, and nothing looks damaged or anything like that, so that's good. The wear from the slave cylinder looks fairly normal, so I do expect this to be pretty well cooked though, so let's take that off. So we got the clutch out, and it actually looks really good in here. There's a couple of hot spots, which is to be expected with a clutch that we slipped to high hell. But the disc looks pretty good. It's got plenty of meat on it. There's not as much dust on here as I was expecting. The wear is a little uneven. You can see that line. So it's grabbing more towards the outside, which is interesting. Which I'm wondering if that's why it hasn't been grabbing right. This is a fairly cheap aftermarket clutch that's in here. Pressure plate, got a couple hot spots. Again, I was expecting that. But this looks like a clutch that only has, 10,000 miles on it. So I'm wondering if we have a clutch master or a clutch slave issue, which is causing this to engage high and engage weird. That uneven wear could also just be part of when it slipped. We kind of cooked the outside of it because obviously it'll spin faster on the outside than the inside. So we're upgrading this thing so it'll hold more power anyway. So not like this is a big deal, that's okay. Keep this as a spare. I mean, it fits jukes, which I work on plenty of. So if somebody needs a clutch real quick, at least we'll have something cheap laying around to get somebody by, or if the drag car needs a clutch, we'll at least have something laying around we can just toss at it to get it moving. So I take that flywheel out and get the new one in. Okay, flywheel's in after crushing my knuckle on my janky band-aid here. I'm bleeding pretty good. All right, so that's in. Clean that surface. We'll clean the surface of the pressure plate, and then we'll bolt that up, and then the fun job of putting the transmission back in begins. All right, clutch is in and torqued down. That is centered. So now begins the part of this that I've been dreading, which is putting that back in. I do need to change out the slave cylinder, so we're gonna swap that out first. Again, I don't know if the slave cylinder or maybe the master cylinder is what was giving me my high pedal. It could also be the fluid was boiled from the slipping and this thing getting hot. I don't know. So we'll swap that out, and then I'm also going to do, instead of doing my clutch lines that I make, I'm going to modify that damper right there. We're going to modify it so that it no longer works. We just bypass it, which will give me more direct clutch feel, which will be nice on a unsprung, or I should say on a single mass flywheel with just a sprung disc. No sense in putting a $250, $300 clutch line on a cube, which I know seems funny since we just put a $1,100 clutch setup on it, but that's where we're at next. So just gonna swap that out, and then I'll probably come back once I have this back in so that I can concentrate on getting it in. So I am by myself, so it's not like I can carry this thing this time. So, yeah. All right, transmission's back in. Crank spins when I take it out of gear. Still spins, so everything's hooked up. I only got 3 bolts holding in right now, so the next job is get all the 18s back in and then start hooking stuff up on the bottom. I have a bit of an aha moment when I was doing this. So that is the water cooler for the intercooler. It's fairly small, but it gets 100% airflow, which is why we're using it. I do have enough space in here for a second one, and I do have this little one floating around. I think I'm gonna put that in there with that one to basically double up on our cooling capacity for the intercooler. I have to take the bumper off to do this. I actually installed this one without taking the bumper off. So I can just install the other one without taking the bumper off. So I think I'm gonna do that because that will also help with intercooler intake air temps. I could also just not be lazy and take the bumper off because I'm already, you know, 3/4 of the way there with the wheels off and everything. But yeah, I'm gonna do that. That's not a half bad idea. And that was actually used as a supplemental cooler for the drag car intercooler when we had an external cooler on that instead of going to the ice box. So it's already got water on it and the right size fittings for the 3/4 inch tube that goes to the intercooler setup. So I think I'm gonna do that. Anyway, get the rest of this hooked up. We'll do all the 18s underneath, get the axles in and all that good stuff. And then get the rest of it put together. I did have to take the trigger wheel off so I could turn the crank. So I gotta put this back on. I have it marked so that it goes on the right way. So that's easy. So we're making some progress. The fuel injectors are actually supposed to be here today too. So that's nice. So I'm gonna have to drain the water out of this thing anyway so I can take the intercooler out. So it's already gonna be all apart and drained out. So that'll make adding that cooler a bit easier. The injectors are right there, easy to get to. So enough chit chatting. Let's get everything hooked up. So we have here a Juke front wheel drive lower torque mount, and then that is the cube one. And as you can see, they are the same. So I have some PowerFlex inserts in there. So the Juke mount is already stiffer than the cube one is out of the box. And putting this in will stiffen it up even more. On top of that, I have a Juke upper torque mount with one of my inserts in there, and then our Snake Eater performance injectors just rolled up. So I'm gonna open those up and check those out. But axles are in, gear oil is all in. I'm gonna put the lower mount back in, and then I'm just gonna pop the bumper off to do the heat exchanger thing. But I also gotta do an oil change, so I'll do the bumper when I lift it back up to do the oil change. So I just gotta lift this sucker up in the air and finish putting together everything on the top. And then we'll get to move into the rest of it. All right, we have our Snake Eater injectors here with a whole spec sheet. Fantastic. You might be wondering why 2200s, that seems a bit big, and it is, but I'm future-proofing. So these 1050s have been doing great, but they are gonna get upgraded. So to do this swap, the injectors that you're supposed to get were out of stock at Snake Eater, so I ended up getting these as a compromise. So I just have to change out the end of it here, and then they should pop on. So I'm gonna pull all these out, pop the other ones on, and go from there. All right, injectors are in. Now we're going to take the valve cover off of this thing, check out the valve train, see how this thing's going after having this much power and boost run through it. I was gonna change the wideband, like I said, to the nano one, but I'm not thinking that's gonna happen because I need to get this thing done today. So I'm gonna pop the valve cover off. I'm also gonna pull the plugs out and possibly do a compression test and see where we're at. I have nothing that's worrying me, just might be good to know. So, yeah. All right, so everything looks great in here. There's no weird wear on any of the cam lobes that I can see. Everything looks pretty standard, everything looks clean. No signs of any leaks anywhere, like in the tubes or the back of the valve cover. I was gonna check clearances, but I'm not seeing any weird wear, so I don't think that's kind of justified. So I think I might just change the oil and slap this thing back together. Cool. Our upgraded Juke mount in. Oil's drained, filter's changed. So I'm gonna pop the bumper off, possibly. I might finish doing everything I gotta do up top first before I do that. All right, front bumper is off. So now we're gonna see if we got room for this thing, which we should. Yeah, once I take that off, plenty of room. Cool. I know it's not huge, but it's additional cooling. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that hooked up and bolted in. And then I gotta put the trigger wheel back on, bumper back on, wheels back on. I could lower it down. I got somebody coming to help me bleed the clutch. And then I have to mess with the tune to get it running on the new injectors. Oh, and I gotta do the steering wheel. I keep forgetting about the steering wheel. I gotta get the steering wheel done. So while we're here, we'll pop this back in place. Pop. All right, we got the second cooler on there. We got a bunch of tubes. It looks like a mess in there, but now we have, you know, that whole tube worth of extra fluid and that full of extra fluid. So that's more in the reservoir. So I'm gonna throw the front bumper back on this thing, put the wheels on it, bleed it, and hopefully have it running. We are back on the ground. Got to bleed the clutch. This has been taking a little longer than I want to because, you know, having a 4-year-old slows things down a little bit. Yeah, bleed the clutch, get it running. Get a couple miles put on the clutch to bed it in a little bit. And then onto the dyno we go. All right, clutch is bled. I'm gonna put the battery tray and all that stuff back in. We're gonna see if we can get this thing to fire up. I still do have to do the steering wheel, but I might save that for another day. All right, we are all back together again. So we got to bleed the intercooler, and we got to mess with the tune. Something I didn't accomplish that I wanted to. I didn't weld that up. This is just taking longer than I wanted to. I need to get the car out of here so I can get some work back in. So I didn't get that done. I got to do the steering wheel, which I'm gonna do probably tomorrow morning, just bang that out. But now I got to sit in it and try to get it running on the 2200s and play with those settings. As soon as I get it running, got to get some miles put on the clutch. Unfortunately, I've been waiting for the registration to a car I finished out there. And I thought I had a couple weeks till I was going to get it from the gentleman, but I got it today. So I'm actually not even going to drive this thing for like a week. So that kind of sucks because I want to get some miles on that thing so I can send it back to him in Connecticut. So maybe I'll loan this out to somebody to put some miles on it for me. But we're gonna get it running. The clutch is bled. Back together. Let's get it running. All right, we are running. We're a little on the rich side, but with giant fuel injectors, it's kind of hard to get a good low idle. If I start pulling fuel out, it starts leaning out really quickly because of how sensitive it gets when you're like this. Only downside to big fuel injectors. Once you're driving, it's fine, so not that worried about it. So I'm gonna shut this off, disconnect the battery, and I'm gonna swap over this steering wheel, or try to anyway. And we'll see how that goes.